Okay, so doing a pika a little earlier here, coming down off Wheeler Peak. We can see right over here. Well, if I can get it to turn correctly. Yeah, there it is. More or less. It's up over there. You can see we've got all of these rocks that are still out, and that's where the peak is, where we finally have the grass give way. It's up here. We're at the point where we're above the tree line, but there are still a fair number of alpine grasses and in the alpine tundra up here that are making a go of it. It's a fantastic place. We can look at some of the different small things and the little yellow flowers that they're producing. Oh, yeah, crossing snow, just a sec. Gotta make sure we land the footing on that. Coming in a little later than expected, but we're gonna get down this. Places like this are truly fantastic and some of the best places there are in the world, actually. Being able to get out, see something truly natural and truly amazing, observe the fantastic beauty of nature, as we can see, especially over this way, where we're starting to get some of the other nearby peaks showing up and being completely amazing. And so, this is kind of I'm thinking about today as we're heading out and traveling around, just the beauty of nature and the remarkable things we can see here, and how we have to ensure that it continues to be someplace that we always have like this. It's always a bit disappointing, frustrating. It's even a bit sad when we have a situation where they're building on some nice place. There are plenty of open, empty deserts to put something in, but even there we have to be cognizant of what we are displacing. Sure, there may not be a lot of big beautiful trees, big beautiful rocks in all these places. Sometimes it's just a sandy space or a bit of broken flat land, but there are things there too, and trying to build and grow into those spaces without really thinking about what we're displacing and the long-term effects can be kind of an interesting problem, especially if we're building on something like farmland, as we continue to see. It's not always the best farmland, but if we think about something like the Salt Lake Valley, in many of the areas that used to be reasonably productive farms and natural spaces have fallen into more construction. Always more homes, always more stuff going up, filling space, use it, and anybody can produce it, at least not the same things that you could. And arguably, there's actually some productivity going on. You're living in it, or there's a manufacturing plant or something of that kind that will be particularly useful. But that is not always the case, and sometimes, no matter how valuable the manufacturing may be, food's still better. Just like the example of a person in the wilderness who is willing to trade all the gold in their possession for one glass of water. It's one of those basic necessities that we have, and if we're not making sure that we always produce plenty of it, that's going to be an issue too. And in somewhat the same way, beautiful places like this have to be retained, because there is something about feeding the soul that is also very important. And being able to come out to places like this, really, I gotta cross the stream carefully. There we go. That's a fun one. Slippery grass. All right, so I was saying, feeding the soul. Yeah, there's something about places like this that can provide a connection, an escape, but also a sense of release and freedom and opportunity and wonder, etc. There's a whole rash of positive emotions that go with it, and you can actually, look at all kinds of different things that have talked about this in the past, right down to the scientific studies and the positive mental influences of such places. But of course, there are fewer and fewer of them. Now, this is where I'm at, National Forest, which is excellent. It is not going to be overdeveloped, although the low part of this is a lovely ski area. So there is some development going on. And, running in the trail is not that bad. You have to have some trade-off there in order to actually access such a space, be able to make the most of it, make it possible for people to have those experiences in some kind of accessible manner. Trails, especially smaller ones, are fairly natural anyway. Animals will make them regardless of what humans are up to. So as long as you don't do too much with it, not going to mess with the local environment, you can still have things going on pretty naturally. And so we want to keep allowing that to be the case. We want to put more effort, as always, into conservation and such things. And we have to find some kind of balance, because there are also things we need to do. And we need to make sure that people can get those things to eat and have a life and survive. And that does require some degree of building and construction and destruction of certain other things in order to achieve that, unfortunately. There's always these trade-offs. And to say that we should, save all of this by going into some kind of anti-growth mindset or anti-development is to say that it's going to become harder for people to do their thing and to make that living, to even afford to come out to these places, because it's a little bit of a challenge in many cases for people to make sure they have all the resources to do so. You have to have some kind of transportation, of course, which in the United States is mostly going to be a motor vehicle. You have to have all the right equipment. It doesn't have to be perfect, but at least a decent backpack, some water, jackets, things like that. You have to be in shape, especially for something like this. You're going well above 13,000 feet and pushing it for mile after mile. That's going to take a little effort, and unfortunately we're seeing some challenges with that in the United States at present, people staying as much in shape. So actually suggesting that people get out to these places more and appreciate them is going to be a strong case to help with some of the elements related to obesity and sedentary unhealth. So that's going to be really good. And in doing so, we'll get more people interested and engaged in seeing these places. We just have to be a little careful, because we've seen ones like Yellowstone National Park largely overrun by tourists at certain points of the year. It is amazing. I don't in any way begrudge anyone the chance to get out there and to see all of that fantastic park. But we've got to find a way to balance that, especially since it really hits only the parts of the park that you can drive to really pretty easily. Tourist buses offload everyone right off the road, and they go to the nearby feature that's 500 feet away down the boardwalk, and where they go to the Old Faithful guys or watch that, just walk around on the nice paved terrain. There's so much of that park that gets missed as a result of this. It's really a sad thing that is the case, because you could spread those people out over the vast Yellowstone area much more effectively. Whether that's better or not, it's a little hard to say, but it would have less impact in any particular area, and certainly would reduce it in the most trafficked areas, so that the Park Service could keep up with it a little bit easier. And people would see a lot more of the park, the really amazing stuff that most people don't get to. Really, more of the wildlife and things. Hopefully they don't get too close to any of the bison. That tends not to go well. Or the bears, or the wolves. You just got to be careful with wildlife in general. My usual concern is actually for moose. They tend to be ornery creatures. Wonderful, but it can get a little bit excited. All right, we're just about getting back to tree line here. So yeah, that's kind of the thinking today. How can we find better ways to balance out and get more engagement with these fantastic places? It's hardly a new question, but there is a lot to think about in that area. And, in future hikes, I may have to delve into more of the specifics in a little more detail. There are certainly some things and some even suggestions that I might make for finding ways to make them more accessible and a little bit more preservation. For instance, like if we're going in, we should do a little more green building. So if we have a high rise or something, you can just make sure you have more plants in it, like little foresty areas, especially more on the roofs. Like I've seen the rooftops of New York, they're very barren. There are things you can put up there, but more gardens would be fantastic. So anyway, that's all for today. The camera today and trying to film myself hiking has been an interesting experiment. I think there were a few points when it definitely looked a little bit odd. Things got in the way, and I do apologize, but that is part of the learning process, and it'll probably happen again when I actually do self-filming like this in the future. I know that other YouTube channels that have done this sort of thing are some that I really like. You can just watch nature go by in the background where somebody talks at you and says interesting things. And so we'll probably continue with this experiment and see how that goes. All right. And as the sun is setting, it is time to set the video. We'll catch you next time. Have a great evening.